Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Salute, and welcome to the Barber Shop. I'm super excited. This is our very first show here. I am with WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio. This is the TV and podcast number 1 for the Barber Shop. This is the very first show, so thank you so much for joining me, for joining us. Today's show is going to be unlike a lot of our other shows. The Barber Shop is a 1-hour men's mental health and relationship show. And we're going to be having some guest speakers and things of that nature. However, today is really just going to be an introduction so that you can kind of understand what the show is about. Of course, if you want to, interject and throw some comments in, you're more than welcome to. This is really a show about just men's issues. Women, men can log in, whomever you want. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the show and as it pertains to the content. So here I am. I'm Christopher Salute, and I thought we would start the show with a story, and kind of the story goes. People always ask me, why do you call your men's group the Barber Shop? Why do you call your men's property the Barber Shop? And I'll tell you a little story about the barbershop concept. So men, as you may or may not know, and feel free, somebody slow me down if you want to in the comments or send me a private chat. Let me know if I'm speaking too quickly, because that's the New Yorker in me. The barbershop show is really based on the barbershop concept. And the barbershop concept started with an idea. I was with a group of men, and we had a men's group, and we were just talking about men's issues and women and dating and, all sorts of stuff. And we thought, well, what can we name this thing? What would be a good name for this? And the name that we came up with was the Barber Shop. I'd like to say that I guided the process along, but I kind of just threw the name in there. And the reason that I thought about the Barber Shop is that men in general will talk a bit more in a barbershop than they'll talk in most other places. Let me explain. Men have a hard time in general. We're gonna get to gender and gender fluidity and things of that nature today, but I'm talking about generalizations here. Okay, men, people with masculine energy, right? And not all men have masculine energy. We'll talk about that. But stereotypically, right, the typical male is not one to share their feelings, right? I read a statistic, not recently, it's been pretty well known, that women speak 3 times more words than men. But it is healthy for men to speak to one another in kind of a tribal atmosphere, right? Whether it be lifting weights or going to the bar or going, I don't care, a Broadway show, whatever you do to get talking to your mates, right? So I thought about the barbershop, and the guys agreed. They said, yeah, men talk about stuff at the barbershop. If you've not been to a barbershop, let me give you an example of how men talk at the barbershop, okay? And this is an actual story that happened with me at a barbershop. So I was in the barbershop waiting for my turn to go. And this is a time, there's magazines on the table, you're watching something on TV, and it's not always sports. It could be the news. Sometimes there's a musical on. It's, I'm not giving you this bravado, right? Men are hanging out, talking about whatever. And the guy in the chair, we were all listening to, because he started talking to his barber. And we all kind of got intrigued. And he heard us. We weren't eavesdropping. He saw us speaking. We weren't eavesdropping. And the man started talking to his barber and then to us. And this is when I caught the conversation. He said to the barber, and I'm not going to use real names, but he said, Brad, I'm telling you, man, I see 2 therapists a week. And I go, 2 therapists a week? Now I'm interested, right? Now I want to hear what he's saying. And he said, I just can't get through to her. She's abusive. And I go, wow, what a man to wear in a barbershop with straight. I don't know this man from Adam. And he's telling me about an abusive relationship. And I'm listening, and he's making eye contact with me through the mirror. And he goes on to talk about how his fiance, who he wants to marry, who he loves with all of his heart, is abusive. And now, look, before we even continue, right, there's the right story, the wrong story, and then something in the middle, right? There's his, there's hers, and there's what actually happened. So we don't know, right? We're in the barbershop. We're talking guy talk. And he says she's abusive. And he goes, I can't. And he starts like not sobbing, but he starts getting choked up. And he's verklempt, and I can't get through to her without her being abusive, and I can't figure it out. I'm seeing 2 therapists a week, and this guy, so we get to know he's in the union, he's a contractor, he's making a ton of money, and he's spending a ton of money on these 2 therapists because he's trying to figure out how to get through to his fiance, who he inevitably wants to spend the rest of his life with. And I think to myself, kudos to you, Guy, for sharing that with us, right? I just think that's an incredible way to start a conversation. I think it's an incredible thing to disclose. That's the first thing I think. The second thing I think is, he has 2 therapists, and he chose to speak in our barbershop about what was happening in his life, about a relationship issue, because he felt safe to do that. And the third thing I thought of was he had an advisory board of probably 3 guys in the chairs, another 3 or 4 guys waiting, another 3 barbers. You're talking about 10 people in the barbershop who are here to advise this man, lend an open ear, listen, kind of speak about what's happening in his life. And I thought to myself, what an interesting situation to be in, right? So I was actually on the Going Solo Network 6 or 7 months ago. At this point, maybe time flies so quickly. I'll tell you a bit more about my life. And I was working with Cece, and then eventually we got to talking, and I said, Cece, I'd be totally interested in doing a show if you're kind of hiring guests. And she said, I would love for you to do a show. What would you do? And I thought to myself, the barbershop is without a doubt the concept I would want to go with. It's not necessarily just about dating. I know that this is the Going Solo network. It's goingsolomedia.com, but it's about men's issues. It's about men's lives. And I think that's something that we don't really focus on. Men do not have as many networks to speak to each other on, and we are not as verbal, and we're not as feedback oriented, right? Together as a group. I, as a man, have a lot of female confidants that I speak to, and I'm a little bit of a different guy, so I do have a lot of men that I disclose to. My brother, my father, some good friends. I've got a ton of folks that I talk to, but not every man does. And so I think it's really important that we as men sit down and talk about some issues, right? Whether it be, sensitive topics. I don't care what it is. It could be something as far as erectile dysfunction. It could be mental health. It could be muscle tone. It could be things that happen when you're 30. You want to look at the hair I'm losing. Somebody was making fun of me about it today. So that's where the barbershop concept came from. So today I'd like to just introduce myself, and a lot of what the show is going to be about my trials and tribulations, my examples, and then of course bringing in other guests and things of that nature. A bit about me personally. I've been engaged twice, married once, divorced and separated once as well. The separation from the divorce. I've had long-term relationships. I've had short-term relationships. I've had a lot of fun in my life. I've said and done some really stupid things, so I'm never perfect, not even close. I've been crucified for them as far as you can be. Some things, maybe not enough, some things too much. I've tried to learn from my mistakes, and I like to think that I have. And I like to think that I have a network of people who we can bring onto the show who will be a lot of fun. From a very early age, I had a girlfriend from 6th grade on, and there started my life and relationships. Talking about my mental health, which is something I'm super transparent about. I'm really, really an advocate for speaking about somebody's mental health. I would say that, not entirely diagnosed by a psychiatrist, but certainly by my therapist at Talkspace. I do suffer from depression and anxiety. I'm not medicated. It's not something that I think impacts my life on that level, but I'm not opposed to it. And I think those are things that we should really be talking about as men. My anxiety is sometimes through the roof when things happen. I get attacked on the internet, anxiety goes up. I have somebody I care about who hurts me, my anxiety goes up. I had a big day at work today, anxiety went up, right? Something happens that throws me into a tizzy and really hits me, in the gut, my depression starts to rise, right? These are things we're not talking about as men. One of the greatest things that my father said to me before I moved from New York to Vegas, and we'll talk about that in a second, is, he kind of grabbed me by the shoulder and he said, son, which, I mean, he may say Christopher, but we're going to use dramatic effect. He said, son, if anything goes wrong and if you need me, I need you to call me, right? Don't pretend like everything's okay, right? And so he obviously knows what's been going on with me and that I suffer from anxiety and depression and all those things. But what he said to me was, look, I'm here for you to talk to, right? And that's something that as a father is just tremendous, right? And as a son, it's great to hear. So we'll go through some of my trials and tribulations. And one thing that you definitely want to know about me, and I spoke about it when I was on the show with Cece, huge thing that you want to know about is I'm not your typical guy with regard to my preference in partner. Although I think that there are a lot more out there that kind of are, we'll use the word in the closet, but it's certainly not to be used when saying this, because it's certainly not a fair statement to make, especially to the gay community, because being in the closet is something that's very taken very seriously. I think a lot of men don't speak about this frequently. I have, since as far as I can remember, I'm only interested in plus size women. So I'm actually writing a blog post about it right now. I was on a dating app, the Facebook dating app, and they showed me a bunch of matches. These women have all the things that you're looking for, and I'm swiping left, and I'm swiping left, and I'm swiping left, which means I'm not interested, right? I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And Facebook stops me, and it says, whoa, why aren't you, are you doing this the right way? Do you need to check your settings? Because from what your settings have told us, these are the women you should be interested in, and you're saying that you're not. And the reality is that I just wasn't physically attracted to them, right? So it's something that's very interesting. Even the algorithm of Facebook doesn't recognize it, right? So have always loved to date plus size women. It's just been, it's not a fetish, it's not a thing, it just is what it is. It's just my preference, right? So I'll tell you a bit about me professionally. I'll tell you about where I am currently. Professionally, you may know me from my being the CEO of Bold Magazine, right? It's actually Bold Media that owns Bold Magazine. So our men's property is the Barber Shop, and we're excited to debut it here on the show today. We're going to be building out a site as well. We're building out 20 microblogs through the course of the year 2020. So I'm really excited to be debuting that, and hopefully we'll have the 20 microblogs up and running. It's a bit tough to say the least. Every morning I wake up at around 5:30 in the morning before my day starts, and I'm blogging and I'm building and I'm doing all these things. So then what do? It would be wonderful to say that I can work on Bold all the time and do this radio show and make all the money that I could and be an influencer. These are not things that are possible, unfortunately. Maybe one day. But if you know influencers and if you know personalities, it's really difficult to make a living doing that. So I'm not banking on that. So I recently just left New York and I moved to Las Vegas. It's been something that I've been planning for a couple of years, and this was the time in which I decided to do it. Why did I do it? And what was I doing in New York, and what am I doing now? I did it because I needed a change, a huge change. I've never moved away from New York City. I was in Westchester, which is a little bit north, and Long Island my entire life, which is a little bit east. And I went to school up in Albany at Siena College, just a couple hours north. I was in the city for a little bit. I lived in the Bronx, which was so much fun. Never moved away from the city, city proper, or a couple of hours away in college. And I needed a change. Las Vegas is wonderful. It's an amazing place to be. It's, as you can tell, I have to set up my office a little bit better. I have a desk, which is about as far as I got. And you can't see it, but this wall that my computer is sitting on is actually pretty full. It has some filing cabinets and some artwork and things like that. I like to put stuff on that wall. It's warm here. It's very inexpensive to live. I have a 3-bedroom house for the same price that I had a 1-bedroom, very small apartment in New York. People are really genuine. Although in Vegas, I'd say about 20% of the people are scam artists. I don't think they've met enough New Yorkers to know that we pick up on it. But everyone else is really nice. It's really inexpensive to live here. It's really warm. It's a change of pace. It's a change of environment. I'm not a gambler. I'm not a big drinker. So these are the vices that I wouldn't fall into. Buffets are everywhere, and I love food. It's a love-hate relationship I have with food. So I'm here in Vegas. So what was I doing in New York? I was actually a professor and an associate dean at at a couple of universities. And I can tell you that, we were talking about career and things of that nature with a friend of mine, good friend of mine actually, who recently messaged me and said, I need your help. She said, I'm looking to make this move and I want to make more money. And I said, well, is it the right move? And she said, no, it's not. It's about the money. And I said to her, the best decisions I've ever made have not been about money. So the best decision that I ever made was leaving the corporate world and moving into academia, where I cut my salary significantly. Did well, but cut my salary very significantly. I made a lot more in corporate than I did in academia, and was definitely the best move I could have made. Learned a lot about myself, learned that I love to be an educator, that it is without a doubt what I was born to be doing. Learned that there are plenty of ways to make money outside of your job as well. Learned that going to your job every day and enjoying, well, that's a good question, Jessica. I'll answer that in a second. Did plus size women plus into Vegas? That's a good question. I will address that. Awesome. Learning that I was an educator and going to work every day and enjoying my job was without a doubt the best move I could have made. Now, the second best move that I could have made was moving to Las Vegas. It has yet to be seen, right? We've been here a month, but I didn't do it for the money. I actually left my job. I resigned without a job. And so here I am. I'm in Vegas. I move here and just is what it is. I'm a single guy. I was seeing somebody recently. You never know where the chips may fall there. But I moved out to Vegas by myself. I had a good friend who moved with me without a job. And so I left my job in academia. So what I do now is I have a pretty big corporate role for a very large Fortune 500 company. And I am tutoring and teaching at night so that I can call myself an educator, which is without a doubt, just makes my day. Is the goal to be back at a university? I don't know. I love being back in the corporate environment. Waking up every morning with the butterflies in my stomach is absolutely incredible. And mentally, it's, it hasn't taken a toll. It's tough when you're in a competitive corporate environment, but sometimes it can be fun. So we'll see what happens. So I do want to take that break, and I want to answer that question, Jessica. Did plus size women have did it play a part? And please forgive me, I'm sick, and I didn't want to disappoint my producer, Cece, but I am sick, and I wanted to make sure that I did my first show today. In fact, I might even sneeze in just a second. Oh my goodness. I do have hand sanitizer. Okay. I didn't want to disappoint Cece, so here we are. So the question is, did plus size women have a role to play in you moving to Vegas? Anecdotally, I'd like to say statistically I know the answer to that. Anecdotally, I think that, and this is just me being me. I visited a lot of cities for work. I was in sales for a while. I was in academia for a while. It seems to me like there is a larger plus size community. Larger. No play on words. There's a larger plus size community in Las Vegas than there is in New York. Now, I read in a couple of places, but this is old data, so please don't crucify me over it. But I read that we tend to be thinner on the coasts and in major cities, and the reason is that, and this is old data, that because we're walking more, because those cities have public transportation. In the Midwest and the South, we tend to have a larger plus population, and that's male and female. So I think that Vegas and the state of Nevada does have a larger population, but also what I noticed about this area was that there was not a lot of events that Bold specializes in. So I thought, you know what, a couple of things. I can live more cheaply, right? If I find the right job, I can put more money into my startup. There might be a community here that would welcome this type of event, the types of events that Bold does. So that's exciting. So without a doubt, I think that it's also a more active community in Vegas. And again, this is all just my own interpretation, my own anecdote. So I'm really not sure if that is the answer, but for now, that's the answer that I have. So talked about professionalism just a little bit. And I just want to also talk about, of course, I'm getting sick now. Give me 1 second. My apologies. I just want to address the fact I am a PhD. I'm a PhD in organizational applied psychology, applied org psych. And what that means is I can move people around in organizations, training, staffing, development, things of that nature. I am, without a doubt, not a clinical psychologist at all. I'm not trained to be a clinician. So I'm not the expert in mental health. I'm not the expert in relationships. at all. What you're going to get from me at the barbershop is going to be my own personal stories, and it's going to be my own biases, right? And I'll try as much as I can to filter my biases so that you get a great story. But what I am going to do, pointing at you, what I am going to do is pull in some experts and pull in folks that we can have conversations with: mental health counselors, psychotherapists, dating coaches, things of that nature. So I really, really, really want to just stress that I am not the expert, but I'm bringing in the guests who are, okay? And this show really is not about me. It's going to be about them, and it's going to be about you. I apologize for the nose wiping. It's gross. I swear I'm pretty clean. I have my hand sanitizer here. So let's talk about what the show is, okay? The show is a place to discuss men's mental health issues, men's topic, men's inclusion, right? If you look or identify as a man, and you can see I'm reading. If you look and identify as a man or male, we want you to listen to our show. We want you to listen to our show even if you don't, okay? We want you to be active as well. It's not a straight cisgender male corner at all. I happen to be straight. I happen to be cisgender, okay? This is for the cis man, the gay man, the straight man, the trans man, any human being who identifies as a man or as a male. I just want to be clear about that. I also want to be clear about what this isn't. This isn't a female bashing show at all. Because when you think about the barbershop, it could be easy to think about, well, when you're in the barbershop, we're going to talk about guys' issues, we're going to get, we're going to get a little raunchy. No. And the reason that I chose the barbershop for all the branding that I do for men's issues is that typically when you're in a barbershop, you are a gentleman, right? So you are polite, you're with some people you may not know, but you're here to talk and you're here to be friendly. Okay, so it's certainly not a female bashing centered show. We don't want to engage in groupthink. We don't want to pat each other on the back for being ignorant. There's never going to be a situation where I say, and then I told her to go to hell, and I have somebody patting me on the back. Without a doubt, not what we want. This is a place where we try to understand ourselves, and we try to grow as humans. And that's what we're here to do. So I want to address a couple of things. Today's show is going to be a bit about the differences in communication between men and women. Now, before we even jump into that, I'm a very liberal dude, okay? So I want to address that in 2019, gender and sexuality are without a doubt fluid. So when I say men and women, I'm talking about the masses, right? But is that even fair, right? There are men who have masculine energy and men who have feminine energy. And even those words are a little outdated, right? Masculine and feminine energy. And then there are females who have both. Oh, give me a second. So there are females who have masculine and feminine energy as well. There are members of the LGBTQ community that don't identify as either male or female, that have combinations of all sorts of energy. So when I talk about communication issues, this really can be applied to just about anything, okay? I was actually pitching kind of the show. I have a new housemate. She hasn't moved in yet. She's a comedian here in Vegas. And she talks about gender issues and communication styles and stuff like that in her show. Comedians, I think, I haven't seen her show yet, but she probably has a little bit more liberty to be funny and say some things that are outlandish because it's part of the act. But we talked about that, and she said, no, I totally agree. She said that it's very possible to have a different kind of energy, whether you're a male or a female or whatever. And so we just kind of talked about that, and I patted myself on the back because I thought it was a great show. By the way, feel free if you need to slow me down to slow me down. So what I'm going to do is I just want to hop into. I was actually just clicking it on my screen, but I don't want to let you guys go. So I'm going to just click it on my phone here and look down again. There are a couple of communication issues that I think I tend to see between men and females. And actually, I went on psychcentral.com, which is a for-profit site. So let's check the biases here, right? But there are a couple of communication issues that they bring up between males and females, and you can probably apply this to any relationship. So what they say is the number one communication issue is that there's typically no reason to talk as far as a male brain or a masculine brain is concerned. Sometimes, he's looking for a goal. Right? He's looking for what is the goal in this communication? Are we communicating just to communicate, or is there a purpose? Right? And typically, a female brain would say, well, the communication is to make a discovery. Right? We're trying to have a discovery. We're trying to figure out where we're differing as people. We're trying to figure out what we what we want to talk about and how we can possibly, kind of get through this conversation and learn about each other. And again, I'm going to give you that disclaimer because there are women who probably want to get to that goal faster. There are trans people, there are gay people, there are cis, there are, all sorts of people have all different types of energies. Hormones play a big factor, whether they are injected hormones or hormones you're born with. So just giving you some generalities, right? Then there's the question of the number 2 question is, how much do I need to say during this conversation, right? Typically, and this is, again, typical. I'm not saying, there are always outliers. I'm a talker. I am a talker. I talk. You'll often find that I talk too much and I dig myself to a bit of a hole. And I'm like, I'll say something like, I don't know. You look really good when you put your makeup on. And then they go, wait, what is that supposed to mean? I don't look good without my makeup? I'm like, no. So, I tend to say the wrong things very often and I tend to overtalk. But again, your typical male will try to use less words, right? It's just the way that they communicate. While typically your female will say, look, they want to organize their thoughts. They might even speak out loud a little bit, right? Totally happens, right? And it's not good and it's not bad. It is. Same way that men don't talk as much. Not good, not bad. It is what it is, right? So that's something that we're constantly thinking about and constantly just trying to figure out. So at this point, I just want to and the little superlative reminded me that we do need to take a very brief break for our sponsors because this show is being broadcast on certain radio stations in Florida as well. And the little prompt on my screen just actually reminded me of that. I'm sure if Cece didn't mean to do that, she probably should have. So I'm going to take a quick break for a second just for our sponsors. And what do I do? Do I mute it? We're just going to mute it. Okay, and we're back. So if you didn't know what that was, our show gets picked up by some radio stations, and we do need to leave about a 20-minute break in there for our sponsors to step in there. We're so proud of our sponsors to come in, so thank you so much to them. We want to make sure that they have their opportunity to speak. So when that show is broadcast, it's going to have all the sponsorship right in the middle there. So for me, it just was important to take that little muting break. So let's jump into our third reason that men and women, or males and females, or masculine and feminine energy tend to have some conflict when it comes to communication. Okay, so what it means to listen. Okay, so this is super important. And actually, what I find interesting is, I don't actually agree with Psych Central here. So they say that he's conditioned to actively listen. He's conditioned to find a solution. She sees conversation as a productive end in and of itself. And she's looking for just the meaning in that conversation. And I'm going to disagree. I don't know that men are conditioned to actively listen, at least not all men, at least not the men that I've, in my own bias have worked with and talked to. And the reason that I think that is I don't think it's a male issue or a female issue. I don't think any of us actively listen anymore. In 2019, we are constantly on this thing, right? We're constantly on our phones. We're constantly looking for the next thing. I get home, literally, I had about 30 minutes after a tutoring session, and I go, I don't want to say it because Alexa will turn on, but I turned on my Alexa and I asked it to play some Beatles, and I turned on the news, and I turned on my laptop, and I'm stripping, and I'm putting my clothes on, and I'm taking my dog out, I'm doing these things. We don't actively listen anymore. And when we do have the opportunity to speak, we tend to speak versus listen. Right, so I don't think that men are trained to actively listen, but I will say that they do typically try to get to the goal. Right, they try to make a productive conversation, and there are, I think, a lot of a typical female would say, no, we are at the goal. We're having the conversation. We're working through it right now. And again, we're just talking about typical. This is your traditional, right? The next two I think are really interesting. Okay, the next two are when she's not feeling herself or when she's feeling down, and when he is feeling down or when he's not feeling himself. And there's a lot, they go through a lot. And I'm not going to talk about, all the things that they go through, because this isn't me regurgitating psychcentral.com. This is me just talking about, what happens when communication breaks down. And I think what's really important to note is, your 5 love languages, right? And I'm sure if you haven't had those conversations with your spouse or your partner, super important to have those conversations. But, they talk about a few things. They say that, when a female is feeling down, and I've actually been, what's the word? Not a victim. No, I've been accustomed to do this. I'm guilty of this. My partner comes to me and says, I'm sad. I got a problem. And I go, okay, baby, what are we going to do to fix it? That's not always the answer, right? The answer could be, I'm here to listen, right? I tend to quote a lot of movies and reference a lot of movies. If you've ever seen the movie White Man Can't Jump, right? And you got, what was her name? The beautiful Latina, this is old, it was in the 80s, actress. And she goes, Billy, I'm thirsty. And Billy goes, all right. And he gets up and he gets her, I got you some water. And she goes, no, Billy, you don't understand. And I'm trying to do the Latina accent as best as I can. When I say to you that I'm thirsty, I don't mean to you that you need to go get me some water. You need to empathize with me. You need to tell me that you understand the feeling of dry-mouthedness. And he goes, are you kidding me right now? When I say I'm thirsty, it means I want a glass of water. When I say I want to have sex, it means I want to have sex. When I say I got a problem, it means you fix it, And it was a really cool dynamic, really cool dichotomy, right? And so that was kind of the theme of the whole movie. And it ultimately led to their breakup. He didn't understand her, and she was just asking for something simple. She was asking for him to listen. And this is a huge problem for us, right? Active listening becomes a huge problem for us. Ultimately, on the other side, right? Men are down, they're having an issue, right? And, maybe they probably don't want their female partner to solve the problem. I know I don't, right? I've had this issue time and time again. My partner says, baby, just lean on me. I want you to, even during my move, I was, seeing somebody, she says, just lean on me, right? I need, I want to be a part of it. As a man, for me, it was important for me to solve my own problem. And so what happens is I return to my cave, my cave of loneliness, right? The cave of introspection, where I want to solve my problem. I want to fix my problem, right? So when I'm feeling down, when I'm not feeling myself, I tend to be a recluse, right? And so there's no way for you to even solve my problem because you don't know what's going on. That's a huge issue there, right? And then they give a bonus one, and I don't necessarily know that I agree with this, but they say that he feels like he doesn't want to be told what to do now. I personally don't love that. I don't care if you're man, woman, alien, dog. I don't take commands well. I also have a problem with authority. So that's my problem, right? But, and that's my problem at work. It's my problem. It was my problem in school. I mean, it's always my problem. I don't love being told what to do. I don't know that that's always going to be a male issue. I really don't. I don't think that that's every man. But here we are. This is what they're saying, right? And they're also saying that she hears from her spouse that her problems aren't as real, so dismissive. And that could be legit on both sides, right? When you feel like your problem is being dismissed, that's a serious concern. So these are just kind of the 6 things that they go through. I can tell you a bit about my own experience, and we'll wrap up in about 10 or so minutes. But I can tell you a bit about my own experience. But first, I want to start with a student story, because I think that you'll be able to kind of link the two. I had a student, and we were working on his writing. And I'm not going to give you his name. I'm not going to give you his grade level. I'm not going to tell you what city he lived in. We were working on his writing. And we were writing about the topic of math. And we said, I said to him, it was an exercise. I said, what is a dream of yours? And he said to me, a dream of mine is to play basketball in college. Okay. And I said, okay. I said, how do you think math will get you there? Now I know the answer, right? The answer is that math is going to help him get there, because if he gets a good score on the SATs, and if he does well enough in math, he can play basketball in college. If he doesn't, he won't get recruited by a good school, right? And so Rosie Perez, thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. Good job. I don't know if you Googled that. For sure. Thank you for including non-gender conformity. Would love to hear guest speakers on this idea and where the gender specifics come from. Oh, I love that, Kristen. Thank you. Yes, for sure. That's something that I'm not an expert in, and I don't know any yet, but I'm gonna find some. So thank you. So anyway, so this student, so I know where the answer comes from, right? Math is going to get him into college. And so what he says is, he goes, math is going to help me play basketball. And I kid you not, he says, math is going to help me play basketball. Okay. And I go, that doesn't vibe with me. Tell me how. And I literally have to feed him. Math is going to help him do better in high school. The high school scores that he gets are going to help him get better in college. The college that he plays for is going to help him play basketball, and maybe even the NBA. Who knows, right? And so I say to him, do me a favor. I say, write that. And I kid you not, he writes. He grabs the pen. Math is going to help me play basketball. I go, that is not what we discussed, right? Your brain is linking a ton of crap. And I have to SEC if I'm allowed to say a curse word, so I won't swear today, but I swear like a sailor. Your brain is going through a ton of stuff. It is constantly linking things up. And your typical male, again, and I appreciate that, Kristen, about gender roles, and I want to acknowledge that, but today we're talking about just your traditional male and female and what happens. But a lot of people, they tend to make that connection in their brain and not make the connection when they're communicating. Okay. And that's a huge issue, because what I have going on in my head needs to be said to you. Right. And this is something that happens to me all the time. Well, it happens because of me. Right. I'm with a partner, and this has happened recently. I'm with a partner, and the end game is I love my partner. I'm trying to build a life. I need to go to work. I need to focus for the next couple of days because I've got a big sale coming, or I've got a big project, or maybe it's weeks that I'm focused, right? But the end game is I'm doing this for us, right? I'm doing this because I'm in love and I want this to happen, and you piece all those things together, right? And I don't communicate that. And that's a huge issue, right? Because my partner's sitting here going, all he does is care about work. And this has not happened one time. I'm not picking on one person that I've dated, okay? This has happened multiple times to me, okay? Where I get focused in my work. I get focused in my role elsewhere. The end game is that I put that focus into that thing so that I can build it for us. It's totally there, right? And I don't communicate that with my partner. And so what we have is a major issue, because my silence creates a concern, right? And my lack of communication creates hostility. And they come back and they say, what are you doing? You're a workaholic. What are you doing? You're out here, you have time for your friends. You don't have time. Yeah, my friends are at work. Or what you didn't know is it was a networking meeting and it was a big sale and da-da-da-da, and I'm doing this for us. And you know what? Shame on me for not communicating, right? And then on the other end, there's some things that we have to talk about, right? The assurance, right? Do you need that assurance? How does that assurance come? Is it the man's job to constantly assure? Can there be something where we say, look, baby, I'm doing this, for the next couple of weeks, here's what you need, here's what you need to know. And I'm a pretty communicative guy. So are there guys out there who don't do that? I don't know. We're going to talk about it. These are things we're going to explore for sure. But I'm telling you, when I do communicate also, I have major issues as well. I'm curt, to the point. I often sound condescending because I'm an intelligent guy, because I piece things in my brain that aren't pieced in other people's brains, and the communication becomes an issue, right? I have emails sitting in my inbox. I have texts sitting in my text messages. You're a bit of an asshole. I can't believe you said that. What the hell? Oh, I did curse. I'm sorry. I hope we can black that out. You're a bit of a jerk. I can't believe you said that to me. How could you say that? Is that what you really mean? And not men and women, not just women, men and women, right? And the reason is because I'm short. I say things quickly, right? And I say things that can sound condescending, right? I'm putting those things together, right? And these are things that we really need to talk about. So how do we fix that? That's the main concern. How do we fix that? In my life, I've always said that I've been two things, right? I've been an educator and I've been an excellent salesperson. And they go hand in hand, right? If you're selling someone an idea, you tend to educate them. If you're teaching somebody, you're selling them on the idea, right? And so my communication style as a writer, because I pride myself on being a writer, is to overly communicate, to talk about those things, to get it out there, right? So when I'm having a relationship issue, and this has happened with family. This has happened with males, females. I'm telling you, my dog, and I'm surprised he hasn't even run in today. He's running around the house somewhere. He's probably taking a nap. We have had communication issues, and I kid you not. He sometimes doesn't know that I'm telling him to not run into the street because I love him. I had somebody yelling at me on the street going, "How could you do that to your dog?" And I'm going, he was running into the street. He's going to get hurt, Dog doesn't know that, right? So how do you change this? How do we as men, women, I don't care who you are, dogs, aliens, whatever. Let's talk about everybody in every single community. Let's talk about trans, gay. I don't care who you are. Gender not specific, sexuality not specific. How do you fix that? This is what I do. It may not work for everybody, but this is what I do, okay? And I'm not good at it. I'm always learning. The two things that I focus my pride on, that I pride myself on, are education and being a good salesperson. There's one thing that those two things have in common. And the one thing that they have in common is that it's all about your audience. If you're teaching to a third grader versus a 30-year-old, it's a totally different audience. If you're teaching to a business honor student versus a liberal arts honor student versus somebody who's not an honor student versus somebody who's in a remedial course, it's a totally different audience. If you're selling to somebody who makes $2 million a year versus somebody who makes $20,000 a year, if you're selling to somebody who likes sports cars versus selling to somebody who likes vacations, if you're selling to somebody who likes jewelry versus somebody who likes ties, whatever, you have to understand your audience, and you have to understand that it's not about you. So the act of listening comes into play 100%, right? Finding the answer to the goal comes into play 100%, without a doubt. But what I think is super important when I'm educating or I'm selling, right? What I think is super important is bridging the gap from concept to concept, because you have no clue what is going on in my brain. The same as I have no clue what's going on in yours. Now, typically, females do a much better job at going through the motions and saying, okay, well, this is what's going on in my brain. And men tend to not do that, right? But let's say, for now that the roles are the roles, and we can do both or neither. Whoever your partner is, it's super important to understand that after you've actively listened, right, before you try to get to the goal, right, you need to remember your audience, and you need to remember that you need to put their wants and needs together. Now, the thing that you may not be aware of, right, is that your wants and needs may be completely different than theirs. They may conflict, right? I think about the song, Google the song Honey in the Moon. It's a great song. Joseph Arthur, and he talks about, you're the honey in the moon that lights up my life, but right now you're not right for me. And so as much as I try to get to that goal, it may not happen, right? And that's where we typically get some of those on and off again relationships that, I want to do a whole segment on it. Please feel free to reach out if you've had luck with an on and off relationship, if you haven't had luck. In my experience, I've seen both. I've seen people get divorced and remarried and be happy. I've seen people who go on and off for years and ultimately fail. So when you have those communication breakdowns and you're not sure if your desires match theirs, you tend to find something that's on and off. Okay. So just something to think about. And, if you want to chime in on that, I'd love to have a whole session on that. Okay. While we're on the topic of songs, we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes. I want to give you two movies that I specifically think, with regard to communication, are super, super important. Okay. I'm actually going to, I'm not going to read it. I was going to read the synopsis from it, but I'm just going to check real quick to see what year it was from. One of my favorite movies. And I listen to this song all the time, not because it's, it's a great song. It's a great movie. Bye Bye Love. There's a ton of stars in Bye Bye Love. What's his name? The guy from all the vacation movies. I'm gonna read this. Matthew Medina, Randy Quaid, Paul Reiser, Ginny Garofalo, right? One of the OGs. She's hysterical, right? Bye Bye Love is without a doubt one of the best movies you can possibly think of with regard to male and female communication. And then what it's about three divorced couples in the 90s. Now, 1995. Divorce in the 90s was not nearly, it was growing, but it wasn't nearly as prevalent as it is now in 2019. Now, conversely, it wasn't nearly as not prevalent as it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? It was growing, but it was really something that a lot of American households had to deal with specifically. And it was a new concept for the majority to deal with, right? And Bye Bye Love traces these three couples, and it talks about, really, if you break it down, communication issues, right? their wants, their desires, as they're dropping their kids off, as they're meeting, as they're trying to be respectful of one another, they're having issues with their communication. And as they're meeting new people, they're not communicating right. And there's one of my favorite, the best character in this entire movie is Randy Quaid. Randy hijacks a radio show. This guy goes on all weekend about how men are terrible. He's got like 5 divorces. Men, you are terrible men, and you can't listen, and blah, 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 blah. And Randy Quaid, throughout the whole movie, goes, I've had enough. And he drives to the radio station, and he kicks open the door. He goes, you don't know what you're talking about. And eventually, he serves him a cup of coffee, and they start to talk, and they go on the radio show together, and they start to break down those barriers. And it's a really great movie to check out. Another great movie I think you should check out. I'm giving you homework, right? It's my professor in me. Another great movie I'd like you to check out is Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. One of my favorite movies, without a doubt. Definitely a great movie for the difference in how men and women communicate. But, if you looked at that movie, their genders were a bit fluid as well, right? So it wasn't really that men and women communicate differently, just happens to be a man and a woman communicating and not communicating well. And I don't want to give away too much, but there's a lot of missteps, a lot of misguides, a lot of miscommunications. There are memories that are lost. There are things that are lost. And at the end of the day, they're both trying to get back to each other. They're trying so hard to get back to each other, but they're missing information, right? Is what the movie's about, if you've seen it, right? They're trying so hard to get to the middle, and they've been through so much, and they've beaten each other, and they've hit each other, and metaphorically, they've hurt each other, and they're missing so many things, and they try to get back and fuse it. And it's a really cool movie. I'm probably going to watch. I kind of want to watch it tonight. It's a great movie. I want to just go into some of the things that we're going to chat about for the next couple of however long that Cece will have me on the station, right? There are some guests and topics that we're going to chat about, like men's mental health, dating and love, men's camaraderie, what we say to men as men, what's okay to say. Well, there's nothing that's not okay to say, but what we typically find that's okay to say, and how we break down those barriers to say more things, right? I'll never forget, ever in my life, one of the most solid men I've ever met, but one of the most quiet men I've ever met. We were outside, and hope he never listens to this because I don't want to embarrass him. But this dude was a dude, like a doodly dude, and smoking a cigar outside. That's my motion for smoking a cigar. And he says to me, I swear to God, now you'll get to know me a bit. I'm Broadway, I'm musicals. I watch some sports. I'm a sensitive dude. I'm without a doubt a sensitive. I cry. I talk about my mental health, all that stuff. And he's not this guy. And we were both at a crossroads, and my wife and I had split, and his girlfriend had left him, and we were just 2 single guys out, and we're having a cigar by my house. And he goes, I swear to God, he goes, hey man, you ever cry? And I'm like, oh my God, my heart dropped. But do I ever cry? Of course. I was so glad that he wanted to have that conversation, and he goes, I'll use the pen. He goes, I've cried. and he tells me the story. And when I tell you, it was incredible. It was, as a man, it was one of the most, and I don't mind saying this because I am as straight as they come. And if I weren't, that's okay too. But I'm a straight man. That level of intimacy with that man can never be replicated. It was one of the most intimate couple of seconds of my life. And, he and I have had a great relationship. Before that, we've had a great relationship. After that, he probably doesn't know that I remember that so well, but he does know how fondly I think of him. So camaraderie is a super important topic, right? Professional issues, right? What your professional self helps you to identify as a man. What your sensitivity means, right? Your identity as a male or as a man. And then we're going to have some future guests. So we're going to have future guests like mental health counselors, coaches, guides, writers, personalities. I'm trying to get one of my really, I wouldn't call him a friend, I wish I could, but acquaintance and certainly comrade, mate, my buddy Blake Banner, who is actually the Bold Magazine Bold Boss of the Month. He's our first male Bold Boss. I'm going to try to get him on for at least, whether it be the next show or the show after. This dude is a mental health counselor. He's freaking brilliant. First of all, kid's gorgeous. He's like 6'3", big dude, beautiful. He's a black guy. He's got this beautiful dark skin. He's got the kind of messed up a little bit beard, but he trims it real nice down, at certain parts. I mean, he's a good-looking dude. Not only is he a good-looking dude, this kid is brilliant. And I say kid, I mean he's a grown man. I call everybody kid. He's a brilliant guy. And what I love about him and what made me want to bring him on the show is his devotion to his partner. I'm sure that as an influencer in social media, he gets hit on constantly. I mean, constantly. He's a good-looking guy, and social media makes it so easy. We're gonna have a full conversation about that with him. Social media makes it so easy for you to just hit on somebody and do it with anonymity, right? And he takes it in stride, and he's okay with it, but he's married. And he's okay, and he doesn't want to offend anybody. But he said during our podcast, if somebody says to him anything about your wife doesn't deserve you, I'd be a better wife. Where's your wife right now? He goes, well, no. That is my partner. That is my best friend. That is my lover, and you're not to disrespect her. And I said, my God, not only are you better looking than me, not only are you smarter than me, not only are you making this life as a mental health counselor and an influencer, but you have devotion to your wife that makes you such an incredible human being. As a single guy, I envy you. And I said, you're making me look bad. So I'm going to bring him on the show, and he'll make me look bad here on the show. I don't mind that at all. And those are the types of guests that we want to have on here. Multifaceted, just multi-talented people who, are not, and he's a sensitive dude. He talks about growing up as a young black guy in a very white place. Growing up as not your typical dude. I think he said he plays some sports, but it wasn't like his big thing. He's really into mental health. He's really into other stuff. He's more of a sensitive guy. And so these are the kinds of guys that we're going to have on the show. So, with that, I didn't think I was going to make it to even 40 minutes today. On my own, we made it to about 50, which is about where the show should be. I hope that I don't get yelled at for saying a bad word. I hope that we can blank that out on the radio. CC, don't kill me. It just flows. But thank you all for joining us today. We are going to have some guests next time, so don't you worry. It's not going to just be me hanging out. That's boring. But tell your friends, tell everybody to come join in. And we want to just thank you so much for being on the Going Solo Network and Going Solo Media. And thanks for joining us here at the Barber Shop. And this is WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, TV podcast number 1, the Barber Shop. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.